Hello and welcome back to the Hombre Cave. I'm your host, the Tequila Hombre, or since we're friends now, you can just call me Mark or Hombre. Either of those work amongst friends. So today we're going to be discussing a really interesting subject. We'll be talking about misleading information about tequila, and we're going to be separating facts from fiction. So be ready for some interesting conversation, and let's get ready. Let's get into it. So if you spent any time on social media like YouTube, Facebook groups, Reddit, Instagram, or TikTok, well, you've probably noticed that everyone seems to be an expert, right? There's guys that'll tell you all kinds of stuff like it's facts, when really a lot of times it's marketing lingo or just plain stuff they've heard but never verified. And that's one of my biggest pet peeves is scrolling through social media and seeing content from somebody that's telling you different things about tequila and agave spirits that just isn't true. So today we're going to address some of the major ones that I've seen recently that just aren't true and aren't fair and can lead you to avoiding experiencing some of the amazing tequilas that are available on the market today. One of the main problems is a lot of these people that are giving you this information are being paid to do commercials for brands. And so they're going to basically tell you what the brands want them to fit the brand's agenda, to fit the brand's marketing message, and to push you towards purchasing the particular brands that they're talking about versus exploring all the brands that are possibly available on the market today. So the key is being able to watch these videos and be able to call BS, be able to say, no, that's not true. Or take the information that they're relaying to you and go explore it, ask other people. I'm always available to answer questions. I don't get paid by brands to do commercials and do videos. So the information I give you is unbiased. It's basically true. I verify the information with producers, as well as I've got thousands of bottles of tequila that I have experienced throughout my time as a tequila drinker and educator, that I would be more than happy to answer questions for you. So that's what I'm going to try to do in this particular podcast, is go over some things that you may have heard and why a lot of times they aren't true, or they're basic generalizations, which when you make a generalization, there's losers in the generalization. And we don't want to hurt brands that are doing it right, that don't deserve to be hurt. Instead, we want to kind of keep it so you have the options of exploring all these wonderful brands that are done right, that use the right processes, that pay attention to the details to make fantastic tequilas that will give you an amazing experience. All right, so I'm going to start off with a little story. The other day, I was scrolling through social media. I'm a power scroller. I don't know about you, some of you, but I'll sit there and scroll through Instagram looking for tequila content to see what people are talking about and see what information is being relayed out there. And I came across a clip from a podcast on Instagram, and they were talking about contract brands and distillery-owned brands. And the gentleman who was a guest on this podcast was telling a story about how a customer of his had tried a tequila, and then after tasting it said, this isn't this brand. This isn't this brand. And then went on to say that, you know, he ended up talking about getting some other bottles from the same brand, and that the customer kept saying, yeah, this is not my brand. This is not my brand. And then talking about how the brand had changed because it was a contract brand and it changed noms. And so I watched this and I went, the first thing I could say to myself is, what? Okay, this for me was a bunch of garbage. Not that the guy was lying or anything, but if this was somebody that was talking to me, which happens all the time, okay, I can tell you a story. And I'll tell you some stories here later about stuff that's happened to me as a tequila educator. So one of the things that there's a heavy push on right now is telling people you should buy distillery-owned brands, and that way your tequila is always going to be consistent and they'll never change noms, and that's not true. There's distillery-owned brands that are awful. There are distillery-owned brands that often change profiles because the distillery doesn't pay a lot of attention to details. There's also distillery brands that are sold and get changed and move noms as well. There's distillery-owned brands that will change producers. Even though it has the same nom, a different distiller will come in and take over and change the profile. And there's distillery-owned brands that create new profiles and stuff all the time to experiment with different things. So a lot of that, there was a lot of misinformation that was involved in this. And so I kind of want to talk about clearing this up. Now, distillery-owned brands are brands that distillery owns the rights to the brands. There's other brands out there called contract brands. Now, contract brands are typically the brand, the mark, the trademark, the name of the brand is owned by somebody else, and somebody else pays the distillery to make the tequila for them. Now, there's brands that just buy, there's contract brands that buy tequila in bulk. They don't pay attention. But there's also brands that the owner's really engaged and will sample every batch before it's sent out to make sure that it fits the profile that they want for their brand. And those are the contract brands you want to look for. One example, a great example of this is Yayo Tequila. Yayo Tequila is a contract brand out of NMM 1414, which is the Vivanco's, Feliciano Vivanco and Associates, otherwise known as Viva Mexico. Sergio Cruz is the master distiller for the brand. But the gentleman that owns the brand, or one of the people that owns the brand, but the one that basically manages, his name's John Bollinger. John Bollinger goes to the distillery all the time to sample new batches that are coming out to make sure that the batches that are made kind of matches the profile, matches what he's looking for his brand. Very engaged. I talk to John all the time. He's always going out to visit 1414 and to sit with Sergio and to make sure the batches are what they needed, because sometimes the batches don't jive up and sometimes he has to reject a batch. And that happens amongst a lot of brands out there that are contract brands. So just because something's a distillery brand doesn't make it better than a contract brand. What you want to do is look for contract brands where the owners are engaged, the owners are paying attention to the details and making sure that the tequila that they're putting out for their batches are going to be consistent. Now, that's another issue too with consistency in the world of tequila. You can have brands, there's some amazing distillery-owned brands out there that you can taste one bottle and go, wow, this is amazing. One bottle for one batch and say, wow, this is absolutely amazing. I love this stuff. And then pick up a bottle 6 months later from another batch and try it and go, I don't find this one to be as good as the other one. And the problem, the reason for that is because inconsistencies from one batch to the other is the nature of the beast with tequila and agave spirits. And the reason being is because in Mexico, you're dealing with agave, first of all, Weber Blue Agave for tequila. It takes 8 years, 6 to 8 years for an agave to mature and to be ready to be used to make tequila. And in those 6 to 8 years, different things happen. They have different temperature and climate conditions, different amount of rainfall. The agave are taken from different areas in the fields where it could get more sunlight, less sunlight, more rain. It could get getting different minerals from different soils. It's at different altitudes in their plantation. So there's lots of different things that will change the flavor profile of the tequila. Now, another thing too is when it's made, right? There's different temperature issues that happen. Most of the tequila producers in Mexico don't do temperature control in their fermentation. So they have to take with whatever the climate conditions are. A lot of them do open fermentation in open areas. So the outside weather will affect the temperature of the fermentation. They let wild yeast do the fermentation, and yeast will change during the seasons of what's in the air, and that changes the flavor profile. The only way to really do a consistently tasting tequila all the time is to keep tighter controls on the processes. So you actually do temperature control. You do close fermentation using the same yeast all the time, but that will only get you close because the agave will never be the same. It's much like I talk about in some of the previous episodes, wine and tequila and the differences. You can have a vintage of grapes from 1 year, one harvest of Cabernet Sauvignon, for example, that's absolutely amazing. But then the next year, because the weather wasn't so good, it was colder. They didn't get as much sun. They got more rain, things like that will change the profile of that Cabernet Sauvignon. And so the next vintage may not be as good. And if you're a wine drinker, you know that you can say, okay, I love, say, so-and-so's Cabernet Sauvignon from 2024 was amazing. I tried the 2026 that came out this year, and it's not so good. Or normally it's like 3 years or so. So you can say, I tried the 2020, I didn't like it that much. I tried the 2024, and it was not as good. So that is the same kind of thing that happens in the world of tequila, because they have no control over what the agave are going to give them and what the yeast are going to give them. So inconsistencies is the nature of the beast. So, and there's some brands that actually capitalize on that. For example, Tequila Ocho. On Tequila Ocho, each batch comes from a different field, and you can actually look at the field on the bottom. And so you can try one bottle from one field, one bottle from another, and they're going to be completely different. And if you ask people that are Tequila Ocho drinkers, they'll tell you, oh, I love, so-and-so field from 2017. That's one of my favorites. I wasn't a big fan of the 2018 from this field. And they'll tell you which ones are their favorites. Fortaleza has been capitalizing on that for a while, where they put the lot number, which is the batch number, on the back of their bottles. And you ask people that have been drinking Fortaleza for a long period of time, you can say, what's your favorite? What are some of your favorite loats? And they go, oh, I remember lot 16A, which is lot 16 Añejo, was one of my favorite ones. I love the flavor profile on it. Or the Still Strength Blanco from lot 22 or something like that. Was one of my favorite. You can pick the loats and basically say, this one I liked better than this one. So it's the nature of the beast that not every batch of tequila is going to taste the same. I mean, in order for it to taste the same, they have to use additives. That's one of the reasons why additives were allowed in the tequila world, was so that brands could make consistent batches where every time you buy their tequila, you know exactly what it's going to taste like. And Clase Azul and Cava de Oro, and they have their formulas. And so when you buy some Cava de Oro or Clase Azul, the ones that use the additives, they're going to taste consistent because they're altered to taste that way. Now, and sometimes you get amazing agave harvests where the field that you got was just so rich in sugars that you're going to produce a good batch from that. Same with grapes. Last year, I had a really nice harvest from some of the grapes for those of you that don't know, I jumped into home winemaking to learn more about tequila production. And so for the last couple of years, I've been actually going out sourcing grapes, making wine, to learn more about fermentation, learn more about creating different flavor profiles. And last year I made a bunch of wine, and I entered 11 of them into competitions, and all 11 of them won medals. So I'm an award-winning winemaker now. But this year, a lot of the same people that I bought grapes from, I was asking them about the quality of the grapes and how things are looking. And they said, weather was really different this year. It started out warm in the spring. The grapes started budding early, and then it got cold. And so some of them had bud break, and then the buds dropped off. And then bud break happened a second time. And so the fields are going to be harvested at different times now, because they're actually maturing at different rates, where one part of the field is going to ripen before the other part of the field. And the temperatures have been a little bit on the warmer side. So this year, my wines that I'm going to get from the grapes that I harvest and use for winemaking are going to taste completely different than the wines I made last year. So I'm cherishing a lot of the wines that I won awards with last year and giving them to friends and stuff to enjoy as well. And I'm looking forward to some of the challenges that I'm going to have from the grapes that I'm harvesting this year. It's the same exact thing with tequila. You don't know what you're going to get. It all depends on the harvest. Now, that's just for the Blancos. Now, in the story, the gentleman that was the guest on this podcast was talking about an Añejo. Now, for those of you that follow me on YouTube and some of the programs I put together, one of the things I do is select single barrels and work with aged tequilas a lot and doing special batches. Now, I could sit with 10 different samples from 10 different barrels from one brand and get 10 completely different flavor profiles. And so what I typically do is I go through those different flavor profiles and I pick the one that I think that my members and that people that follow me and stuff are going to enjoy the most. And if you're not a member of the Tequila Barrel and Agave Collective, you should look to join it. We do some really amazing special batches and stuff. I'll put a link in the description so you can come join us if you want to be part of that community. So each barrel will provide you with a different flavor profile as well. Not all barrels are the same. And so a key for making good añejos and stuff a lot of times is the producers will blend barrels. They'll take a really good barrel, blend it with a not so good barrel to get a decent flavor profile from it, or a good flavor profile from it. So it's the same thing with any aged tequila. You don't know what you're going to get from the barrels, so they're never going to taste the same. So the whole idea that if you go with a distillery-owned brand versus a contract brand, your brands are always going to be consistent and taste the same, or they're going to have minor seasonal differences. That's not true. You're going to notice big differences between it, but that's one of the things you have to learn to embrace. And so some of the advice that I give people is try 3 different batches from a brand before you give up on it. This way you're giving a brand 3 chances to wow you, to impress you with the flavor profile that they create. I think that's fair. I think that's fair. And so I myself have not done that, and I've been learning. I mean, it's been a learning experience for me. And so I'm now focused more. And if you watch some of my reviews, sometimes I say, I'm going to spend some more time with this, or just because I don't like a particular bottle that a brand sends me and I say I don't like it on one of my reviews, doesn't mean I'm going to give up on the brand. Now, a prime example of this too was, it's not necessarily with an aged, but it was with a high proof Blanco, where I had a brand send me a high proof Blanco. It was the first batch that they did. And the first batch was not good. It was really hot. It burned. And I was like, wow, I can't believe how hot this is. It burned my throat. I could barely talk after I did the review. And so as a joke, I had a rubber chicken squeaking through the review to do the review. And it was kind of funny. I had a lot of fun with it. It's tequila, right? Let's be a little open-minded, a little fun with it. So I used a chicken to do the review, and the owner of the brand got offended by that, but some people just need a sense of humor. So, but that first batch was really hot and it was not good. But a subsequent batch that came out was a lot better. And so I ended up trying a sip from another batch and was like, okay, this is a lot better. This isn't as hot. So things can change. So just because you have one bad batch doesn't mean that you should give up on the brand. What I would recommend doing is, if you get a bad batch, write down the lot number on the bottle. A lot of times you can see it's printed on the side or on the back of the front label. You can look, and you can even ask the brand if you want to message them on Instagram or Facebook and ask them where the lot number on the bottle's listed. They'll tell you where you can find the lot number, and write down that lot number. And if you like that lot number, stock up on it. Stock up on it so then you have it for a while. And then the next time you try one and you don't like it, write down that lot number. And then next time you go to buy another bottle, avoid that lot number that you didn't like, and make sure that the bottle that you buy is not that lot number, because that lot's going to be consistent. Bottle to bottle from the same batch, the same lot is going to taste the same, but bottles from different lots are not going to taste the same. So it is true, though, in some cases, the contract brands do leave the distillery they were with before and go to different distilleries. And they do that for different reasons. Sometimes the distillery can't handle the quantity that they need to produce in order to keep up with demand. Sometimes the distillery is difficult to deal with, and so they want somebody that's going to give them more of what they're looking for their brand profile, so they'll change distilleries. And sometimes, even when a distillery has the same nom on it, they could be purchasing juice from other distilleries to make their tequila anyway. So there's a lot of things that can change with the flavor profile, but it is true that some contract brands will change distilleries and will have a completely different flavor profile than what they did before, because of a change that the owner wanted to make. And you can message the owner and say, hey, were you looking to change the profile on this? And what is your goal? What kind of things do you want to do? But a lot of times, if the owner is engaged in the brand, they're going to work with the new distillery to make the batch as close to the way the other producers did as possible, and try to keep it the way they like their tequila presented, which is great. So I've had brands that actually have changed distilleries for the better. They actually got better with the new distillery. And so one of the examples just recently happened, and you guys are kind of getting some insider information. This hasn't been widely publicized yet. I haven't released the video yet to talk about this, but I will be soon. So you guys are kind of getting some insider information, a little preview. But Santofino, Guy Fieri, and Sammy Hagar's tequila brand has changed distilleries. And one of the reasons why they changed is because the previous distillery they're with couldn't keep up with the demand. They needed to be able to produce more tequila to keep up with the demand for the brand. So they switched to a new distillery, and they sent me a bottle, several bottles actually, of the new 110 Blanco. And I like it better than their old 110 Blanco profile. So it actually gotten better in my opinion. And I'll talk about that when you see the review come up on the channel for it here real soon. But a lot of times brands will change for the better. Pasote was with Felipe Camarena 1579. I think it got better with the new distillery they're with, and they've been with that new distillery for a while, and it's still a very nice, well-made brand. So there's a lot of things that happen like that where the brands will actually get better when they change distilleries. So the fact that it's a contract brand is not a bad thing. And if you're looking for a consistent brand every time, you want the brand to taste the same with every bottle you open, then with tequila, you're barking up the wrong tree. You need to stick with the additive ones like Clase Azul or Cava de Oro or Adictivo. Those are the ones that use additives where they manipulate the flavor profile and have a formula so they'll taste consistent from bottle to bottle. So today we've challenged the popular myth that distillery-owned brands are the ones that you should be purchasing if you want consistent tequila all the time. First, remember, every batch of tequila is naturally different because tequila begins in agriculture, right? So, and nature doesn't produce identical crops year after year, especially with Weber Blue Agave. Just even from batch to batch, from field to field, it's going to be different. Second, contract brands and distillery-owned brands are simply different business models. Either can produce exceptional tequila or mediocre tequila. The structure doesn't determine quality. The people and the decisions that they make determine that. So the next time you hear someone make an absolute statement about tequila, ask a few questions, dig a little deeper, taste broadly, learn about the production, ask questions, ask me, ask a producer, ask a brand, but keep an open mind. And the more you learn about tequila, the more you realize the best answers are rarely the simplest ones. That's what makes this spirit so fascinating. So we'll see you next time here on the Hombre Cave.